I'm your host, Davida Shinsky, and you're listening to Live Without Limits, Reach Personal Success on a Daily Basis. Anxiety is one thing that can affect your mental health, and it can also affect whether or not you are capable of setting achievable goals and following through. Therefore, today we want to talk about this subject, and our presentation today is titled Four Conflicting Signs of Anxiety, and it looks different on everyone. And that's because when you think about it, every one of us have a different makeup, and how we react to the environment we live in, all of us react differently. Anxiety is by far one of the most common psychological issues because there are several types of forms of anxiety. It also means that the condition is largely misunderstood. Also, everyone and every person who has had or has anxiety has experienced it in a unique manner. And this also increases the likelihood of undermining each people's experiences. Often, when we hear that someone has anxiety, we expect to see them in a state of panic, shaking a bit, tapping their leg uncontrollably, hyperventilating, and with sweaty hands to top it all off. Yes, all of these things can happen when someone is anxious, but not always. And if you do not experience these common signs, it does not mean that you do not have anxiety or that yours is better. It simply means that you experience is different. Despite how every person experiences anxiety, there is one common thing for everyone. Anxiety is an internally overwhelming and exhausting, yet crippling feeling. Common signs of anxiety, and these can include restlessness and difficulties in concentration, tense muscles, poor sleep hygiene, increased and irregular heart rate, aches and pains, changes in sex drive, nausea, hot flashes, and teeth grinding. The conflicting signs of anxiety: being withdrawn due to anxiety. Such people are not comfortable with coming forward and being present. It is in a crowd, especially when the people are new or when the crowd is big. These people withdraw, and that makes them feel invisible. In a way, to them, having less attention around them means they are less likely to be judged. However, anxiety can also look like being overly loud. Some people with anxiety cannot stand silence. To them, any silence is uncomfortable and should be filled. If no one is going to do it, they will do so. As a result, they tend to take on a lot of space and dominate the conversation, saying yes to everything because of the fear of being judged or losing friends. Some people say yes to everything suggested by their friends or family. They do not turn down an invitation or offer because they are scared that if they say no, they will be judged and maybe no one will want to interact with them. However, anxiety can also look like saying no to everything. For others, social interactions, commitments, or responsibilities are a no go area. They will say no to everything because they just can't handle social interactions in some cases. They are also not comfortable with being in charge or responsible for anything as they are worried that it might not go well. Consequently, they turn down any responsibility, feeling like everything is going too fast. For some people, time flies due to anxiety. The world seems to spin very fast, and they don't see where the time goes. They are unable to get much done and just want everything to stop and slow down. However, anxiety can also look like feeling like the world is too slow. On the other hand, some people might feel like everything is dragging and not moving at the pace that it is supposed to. One example is when someone who has social anxiety is on stage giving a 10-minute presentation. Those 10 minutes might feel like a lifetime. One might just need them to end so that they do not deal with uncomfortable feelings or being in front of a crowd or being the center of attention, worrying about the future. Anxiety can result in one being paralyzed about the things that could possibly go wrong. This intense fear can typically get in the way of their everyday life, thereby making it difficult for them to go through mundane day to day tasks. It also makes it challenging for one to plan for the future, thereby increasing the likelihood of a negative outcome that could have been avoided by sufficient preparation. However, anxiety can also look like being worried about the past. Some people focus so much on the past that they are unable to move on and do something else. They think of the mistake that they made and how they could have done things differently. They also are so fixated on that past that the not so nice experience that they are unable to try the same thing again. For instance, someone who had to work, interview, and looked back at how they responded to some of the questions and realized that they could have answered the questions differently. Consequently, this person then becomes scared of the possibility of doing more interviews. These are just some of the many instances where signs and symptoms of anxiety might seem different or conflicting, but are equally critical and should receive attention. Conflicting signs of anxiety All types of anxiety should be addressed. The above mentioned types of anxiety can coexist, and one does not necessarily have to present all the symptoms for them to think that they need to see a professional for help. We all have moments where we feel anxious, but when this continues and is worse, scenarios get in the way of your day to day life, always look for help. There surely are some things that you can do to manage anxiety alone or at home, but in some cases, you need a professional to give you the adequate and effective tools that you need. The most important thing is to understand that your experience will never be identical to that of another person, and it should never be undermined. It is also important for us to spread kindness and allow those around us to effectively heal from the things that they might not be comfortable talking about. Now, there's two things to remember about anxiety. In some ways, it's a symptom of mental illness, and in another way, it's how you deal with your everyday life. And when it's a symptom of mental illness, you often need assistance just to find out where it comes from. And in some ways, it affects your daily activities and whether or not you're able to achieve the goals that you set for yourself. Therefore, be aware of anxiety, and when you need help, be sure to seek the help